Hello everyone, good morning, good evening. Welcome to another PMP Q&A session. Today we will be discussing 10 more challenging exam-like questions. So let me just share my screen and then we will start. All right, so some of you have joined for the first time. So I'll be showing you a question for 60 to 70 seconds and you will be answering in the chat window directly to me so that you don't influence others. So let's start. We are going to solve 10 questions and roughly it would take 1 hour. Okay, so let's start question number 1. All right, so let's start. Vivek, could you please explain your answers?
Yes, sir. So for secondary risk, as per my understanding, it is that the plan that will execute if the supplier's lead time increases beyond certain threshold. That's a secondary risk. B is a residual risk which matches the option A. After implementing the major updates, the company's ERP system, minor bugs will occasionally affect the reporting function. So that's a kind of a residual risk. Fallback plan is something matches with option 5. When the key logistics fails to meet the delivery in the unforeseen events, then the project team has a plan to switch to the alternate provider. So that's a fallback plan. The workaround is option 3. When the unexpected delivery changes delay, then there is a workaround what team will do. And the contingency plan is 4. That is installing a new system. That's a contingency response. New security system to mitigate the risk.
All right, thank you. Okay, anybody else who disagrees with what Vivek has mentioned? Anyone, please? Gagan, do you want to explain your answers, or if you have a different answer from what Vivek has mentioned?
I think secondary risk, he has mentioned the project includes a plan that will be executed if suppliers lead time increases beyond a certain threshold. So I think this is the response for this. This is a contingency response, which has been planned in the planning stage. Okay. That if this risk occurs, this is a contingency response. And after implementing a major, the first one is fine. This is a residual risk. Unexpected changes delay for the approval. Yeah, third one is workaround. Yeah, I agree with that. And then fourth is installing a new security system to mitigate potential breaches inadvertently triggers the network slowdowns. This is the secondary risk actually, because it has been, it is initiating a new risk, first implementing plan, and it is getting a new risk introduced.
All right. Yes, that is correct. Yeah. That is correct. Thank you again for detailed explanation. So secondary risk, let me explain all these terminologies. Secondary risk is a risk that is occurred as a result of your response to a primary risk. So for example, there is a primary risk, you respond to that risk, and as a result of that, you get into another risk. So that is called secondary risk. So if you see, it says installing a new security system to mitigate potential breaches inadvertently triggers network slowdown. So when you were responding to mitigate potential breaches, you get into another risk, that is a network slowdown. So primary risk response leads to another risk. So A4, so that is correct. Number one, that is called secondary risk. I hope it is clear. Residual risk or residual risk, it's a type of risk that remains there even after you implement all possible risk response strategies. So for example, you're wearing seat belt, you are taking care of indicators, you are driving within seat limits, you are looking here and there, you're very cautious, but still there is a risk of accident on roads for which you can't do anything. That is called residual risk or leftover impact of risk or risk that remains even after you apply risk response strategy. So if you read option 8 says after implementing a major update to the company's ERP system, minor bugs that occasionally affect reporting functions remains as a risk. So you can't do anything about these. So next is B2, fallback plan. Fallback plan is also called plan B. Once your primary risk response fails, you have another plan in place that is called fallback plan. So if you read option 5, it says if the key logistic provider fails to meet delivery deadlines due to unforeseen events, the project team has a plan to switch to an alternate provider. So this is your plan B. So C5. Workaround. Workaround is a temporary solution. So for example, whenever an issue is occurred and you have to immediately respond to that situation, you implement a workaround. So workaround, it's a temporary solution before you find a detailed or comprehensive or permanent solution. So if you read option 3, it says when unexpected regulatory changes delay the approval of a new product, the project team temporarily redirect resources to the other critical project to maintain productivity. So it's a temporary solution. So we have D3. And the last one, contingent response. Contingent response strategy, it's a strategy that you implement when certain events are occurred. So as a result of certain triggers. So for example, you keep on monitoring when certain triggers happen, you implement contingent response strategy, right? So for example, you say employees' performance is not up to the mark, right? And you have a, let's suppose, training program. So you'll say we'll have a training program when employees' performance starts going down up to certain level. When this event occurs, only then we will be implementing contingent response. So if you read option 4, it says installing a new security system. The project includes a plan that will be executed if the supplier's lead time increases. So this is the trigger. So when you have a trigger, and only then you implement the response that is called contingent response. So last one, E is 2. Yes. And option A is 4.
B has to be 1.
Yeah, B is 1. Yes. Yes. Right? I hope it is clear. So if you're not clear, you can ask. Now let's read the explanation, which is almost similar to what we have discussed. Last one is typo, which is contingent response strategy. Please read it and then we'll move to next question. All right, next question. All right. Monica, you have chosen option A.
Yes, I chose option A because the other team members did their jobs. I think they should be recognized. And I think that it's an opportunity to mentor the person who couldn't do their job.
All right, thank you. Manmeet, you have chosen option B.
In this situation, the one team member was not able to complete their job. To my understanding, retrospective, um, the purpose of retrospective is to evaluate the last work item, and helps the team to understand the successes and failures so that they can improve going forward. It is an important part, and if they are not able to, like, all the other team member has done it, so one team member has not done it, there must be a reason. So having a face-to-face talk meeting would be able to understand the reason behind it. That's why I picked option B.
All right, thank you. Kokila, you have chosen option C.
Yeah, well, actually, it is a retrospect meeting, and and it's fair to say that it's the deliverables not accomplished, but it is the responsibility of the entire team, not that individual person. Maybe something is, blocking him, so it's every team member should assist to complete the deliverable. So I would definitely mention that in the retrospect meeting.
All right, so yes, that is the correct answer. Option C is the right answer. The question is about during a retrospective, it's revealed that all team members complete their task except one. Now, the principle is completing the sprint goal or sprint task. This is not responsibility of individuals. This is a collective responsibility of a team. As Kokila mentioned, if somebody is failing to complete their job, it's the collective team's responsibility to help all team members to achieve the sprint goal. Yes, first we will be reinforcing this principle, and then definitely we will be talking to other team members, or we will be talking to that team member. We will be having face-to-face meeting. We will be mentoring. That's the secondary step. The first action, or the most important action, is to reinforce the principle of meeting sprint goal, that is collective responsibility of all team members, right? So option C is correct. Tell the team that each member is responsible for their task. However, the entire team is responsible for sprint completion. Okay, I have a comment. It says, doesn't A meet that? Appreciate other team members and mentor the team member who couldn't complete their job. So again, you're not reinforcing that it's the collective responsibility. So shared ownership or collective responsibility, that is one of the principles of Agile, right? So we don't look at individuals' performance. We look at the entire team's performance when we evaluate it. So first, you need to reinforce this principle, and then definitely you will be talking to that individual, try to understand the reasons, causes, and then mentor or whatever other possible solutions. So correct answer is option C. Tell the team that each member is responsible for their task. However, the entire team is responsible for sprint completion. Let's read the explanation. So the core concept is reminding everyone that individual tasks contribute to a shared sprint goal, emphasize teamwork, and foster a sense of collective ownership. Next question. All right, probably the most confusing question. You'll see a lot of question in the exam like this. Very precise statement, right? One-liner or two-liner, and then two options would be really, really close to each other. Right. Okay, so let's start. Priya, you have chosen option A.
Yeah, I thought going with the PMI principles, the first option would be to, be the mentor or the coach and try to see what you can do to improve performance of the team lead. Are they having any personal issues that is stopping them from performance, or there could be a multitude of reasons, and that's the first step. Obviously, if it's in the critical path and it's the project is probably headed for failure, then I would probably go with option B. But initially, I think option A might be the first step.
All right, thank you, Priya. You said there could be multiple reasons. Okay, I'll come to that. Okay, I'll take one more comment. Manmeet, you have chosen option C.
The team lead has been newly appointed. Sorry, the project lead has been newly appointed. And due to the lack of skills, the project got delayed. So I would like to discuss what kind of skills he's lacking and why he's not able to lead the project in a way it needs to move forward the way it has to. So I believe discussing will make me understand the reason of his lack of skills. What are those? And we can come together as a solution. That's why I picked option C.
All right, and Manmeet, how would you respond to Priya's comment? Like it's one of PMI's mindset or principle, like always go for mentorship, mentor the team lead.
Mentorship is good, but before mentoring, we need to know the reason, what kind of reasons, skills that he's lacking. It has to have a talk first.
All right, absolutely. So now why I said this question is the most confusing one, because in this question, we have two principles which are conflicting. So I have explained it again and again, like one is mentor, go for mentorship whenever there is a gap. And also we have discussed another principle, that is have a face-to-face meeting, have a direct discussion, right? Whenever you get a chance to talk to, aggrieved party or other individual or other group, go for that. So remember, whenever you have a situation like that, first of all, try to understand the situation. And for understanding purposes, face-to-face interaction or interactive communication is best form of communication. So before you go for mentorship or any other action, first of all, have a discussion with the team lead or with the relevant individual. Try to understand their point of view. And Priya also mentioned there could be multiple reasons. Try to understand those reasons, and maybe you come up with a multi-pronged strategy, mentorship, and maybe you come up with hiring more resources or finding a support, or maybe some help from PMO, some help from Agile coach, or you can come up with multiple options. So first of all, discuss a way forward with the team lead, and then of course you will be going with mentorship. So correct answer is option C. Let's read the explanation. All right, so bottom line is whenever you see an option where you have a kind of collaborative environment, face-to-face communication, direct communication, do not ignore that option. All right, next question. All right, again, it's an interesting question. So let's see. Robin, you have chosen option B.
Yes, I took a page out of maybe the previous question, and I felt that having that face-to-face meeting with the sponsor to identify the way ahead is the way to go. I did find that maybe D was an option, but I thought that B was stronger.
All right. Thank you, Robin. Just a thought. What's happening in option A? If you take the same principle that we discussed in the previous question, what's happening in A?
Okay, that refers to the product owner and not the sponsor.
Okay, but discussion is happening, right? So if we take the principle of face-to-face meeting, so discussion is almost similar to that. But yes, B is a strong option, like it clearly says you're having an interactive or face-to-face. But A also says discuss the matter with the product owner. So discussion is one-on-one or face-to-face or interactive, right? When you discuss,
Right.
it's an interactive communication. So just saying, if we just apply the same principle of face-to-face, it is in two options, like option A and B, it's the same way. The approach is same, right? It's just we are discussing with different person, right? Now we'll see which
Right.
one is right. All right. Thank you, Robin. Okay, Manmeet, you have chosen option D.
Sponsor prioritizing the feature. Obviously, he has a reason that this is a priority, and we're working on a security related feature, which is obviously another priority. So, just denying or getting into discussion or doing face to face meeting, there should be a way that, as a first step, we should find a balance between the sponsor's need and the development process. If that's a go to, then we can process further. If not, then maybe the second step is have a face to face meeting to the sponsor, telling him that, okay, we try to prioritize it, but it's not working because we're working on a security related feature. So that's how I thought. And I think D is the first step as a project manager could be done.
All right. Thank you. Mohan, you have chosen option A.
Yeah. So basically, I think this is a prioritization issue, right? With the feature, and the sponsor is recommending to prioritize a feature, whereas the team's deciding on other features, right? So I think my standpoint was product owner usually negotiates with the customer, interfaces with the customer, and is in between the sponsor and the team. And he essentially does the prioritization. So having a discussion with the product owner would be the best option in my opinion. And
All right, absolutely. So this is a question regarding technical understanding of roles and responsibility in Scrum or Agile processes. So prioritization is responsibility of product owner. That's the primary function and role of product owner to help the team prioritize product features. So here the question is about priority. There is a conflicting priority between two features or multiple features. So you should discuss the matter directly with the product owner who are responsible for that. Okay, and you need to discuss with them like there is a conflict and you want some technical feature or that development process to be prioritized. However, sponsor has a different point of view. So have a discussion, have a direct discussion, but with the product owner, not with the sponsor, because it's not your job to do the priority. Prioritization is the job of product owner. So you need to discuss with them, and maybe they would be discussing with sponsor and having an agreement, and then they would let you know, and team collaboratively come up with a new priority or whatever is relevant. So correct answer is option A. All other options are incorrect. Have a face-to-face meeting with the sponsor. We can't do that because that's not project manager's job. Facilitate a team meeting. Again, it's the product owner's responsibility. Find a balance between the development process and sponsor needs. Yes, product owners would be doing that. It's not your job. All right, let's read the explanation. All right, next question. All right, so you have to choose two options. Okay, so let's discuss. So Monica, just explain why you have chosen option B.
So the burnout up chart shows the work that you've completed so far, based compared to the story points. So it would show progress to date.
All right, absolutely. So burn up shows your completed work. So you can see at any point in time the value of completed work through a burn up chart, right? So we have two axes. Along the x-axis, we have timeline. Along the y-axis, we have completed work so far. So you can easily see the value of completed work at any point in time. All right, great. Thank you, Monica. Robin, you have chosen option A.
Yes, A and B. Methods to present the value of work. So it's not necessarily the measured progress to date, but the actual value of work, which would be the earned value. That would be A.
All right. Okay, so you're saying actual value of work is measured through earned value. So this is also one of the methods. All right, thank you. Alan, you have chosen option C.
Yes, I choose B and C. But C also for me. And the Gantt chart, we can also review all the activities that we need to perform, and also how is the process of each of activity. So I mean, like we are tracking how they are, how is the flow, and how we are completing them.
All right. Okay. The only problem, Alan, with Gantt chart is that it tells you progress based on each tasks. So rather than providing you a cumulative value of work that is completed so far, that is not mentioned in Gantt chart. Gantt chart is a task-based bar chart where you see how much work for each activity is planned and how much work you have done, right? So if you want to see the value of completed work, correct answer is option A, and option B, earned value and burn-up chart. Critical path method, CPM, it does not tell you the value of completed work, and similarly, work breakdown structure has nothing to do with it. Correct answers are option A and B. Let's read the explanation. All right. In case of any confusion, you can write your comment in chat window, or you can raise your hand, or if you have a follow-up question, feel free to ask, right? Okay. Next question. All right. Priya, you have chosen option C.
Yeah, I think in control chart, you can see the thresholds of the quality thresholds, basically. So I think control chart can tell you, can map out where the product quality is in relation to the thresholds that are established. So that's why I chose control charts.
All right. Thank you. Right. Anton, you have chosen option D.
Hi guys. Yeah, I've chosen option D because as far as I remember, Pareto chart provides this dependency of one variable across the other known data. I may be wrong though.
All right. Thank you, Anton. Shri, you have chosen option D.
Yes. So here also it is kind of we look at, I think it's the 80-20 rule saying that looking at the number of issues that we have, basically saying that, okay, these are related to the other issues. So it is kind of a mathematical relationship we are trying to do. So that's the reason why I picked the Pareto chart. Control charts, yes, means there also we use values, but it is we have the upper and lower limit, and between that we see the values, and scatter plot just one mean and then values there, but it's a relationship, mathematical relationship. That's something I thought that the chart is the right one.
All right. Thank you. Robin, you have chosen option B.
As far as I can remember, fishbone diagram is a tool for determining root causes of issues.
Yeah.
So that sort of stuck in my mind to choose B above the others.
All right. Thank you. Gagan, you have chosen option A.
Yes, Amar, because the question is asking about the relationship between the equipment maintenance and a particular root cause, a particular quality. So equipment maintenance is scheduled in some particular days when they are happening. And when they are happening in a good way, then we can relate that this quality is at this mark. And if maintenance is not happening properly, it is not in that mark. So a relation can be maintained, can be showed, yeah.
All right. Yes. So correct answer is option A. So Gagan, how do you know all the correct answers? Tell us the recipe.
I have your computer access actually.
You have access to my computer?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Yes.
So
So
I've,
option A is correct. Now, let me explain why option A is correct. So let's discuss these one by one in detail. So if I go back to read the question, it says one of the root causes behind poor quality is poor equipment maintenance. So root cause is already identified. So Robin mentioned that fishbone diagram is used for root cause identification. Root cause has already been identified. It is being said one of the root causes behind poor quality is poor equipment maintenance. So you have already identified a root cause. So there is no need to go for fishbone diagram again. Robin, does it make sense? You understand? And the problem in the statement is you want to substantiate this relationship mathematically. So you want to see if there is a relationship between variable X and variable Y. That's what you want to do. And variable X is equipment maintenance and variable Y is poor quality. So actually you want to see a relationship between X and Y, and you want to substantiate it through numbers. That's what you want to do. Now, if I go here, control chart has upper control limit and lower control limit, as you could see here. And you could plot samples to see if your process is calibrated accurately. And you see if there is any point that is out of control. So it doesn't talk about relationship between two variables. It just says you take samples and you plot on a graph and you see if there is any sample that is out of control. So you could see this red dot is out of control. So this is a tool to study your process. So you study your process, you analyze your process, and wherever you see an anomaly, you investigate that and you recalibrate your process. So it's a process improvement tool. Priya, is it clear? You talked about control charts. Yes, we use numbers, but these numbers are not used for substantiation of mathematical relationship between two variables. Okay, so control chart can't be the right answer. Next is fishbone diagram. I have already explained it. So fishbone diagram, it is also called YY diagram, cause and effect diagram, Ishikawa diagram, right? We use this for identification of root causes. So there is no mathematics involved here. So it's a branch-based structure where you come up with various root causes behind the problem. So you can see you have a fish head where you have a problem, and then you have main factors, and then you have various branches in the form of root causes. So again, fishbone diagram is not a solution. Okay, someone chose histogram as well. So histogram plots frequency of defects. So for example, in your product development, you have different type of defects, defect A, B, C, D, E, right? And along the vertical axis, y-axis, you have number of defects. So you can see type A defects, let's suppose number is 10, this is 20, this is 5, this is 8, this is 3. So you can visually see where you should focus or which defects are recurrent. So here we can see defect B is the most important. If we handle this, then a lot of impact could be lowered. So this is histogram. Again, it doesn't talk about relationship between two variables, okay? This is scatter plot. So you can see we have two variables, X and Y. Y is poor quality, X is overburdened employees, right? As you could see here, this is X and this is Y. So we plot X and Y. If I plot X and Y, you can see a linear line here because there is a strong relationship between X and Y. Any change in X leads to a subsequent change in Y. And you can see a linear line. So on a scatter plot, if points are closer to each other, it indicates a strong relationship between two variables. On a scatter plot, if points are scattered, it indicates a weak relationship. And as an example, what we did, we plotted X and Y, and then we plotted X with Y dash. So you can see if I increase X from 1 to 2, there's a subsequent increase in Y. If I increase X from 2 to 3, Y increases accordingly. So that's why we have a linear line here. It indicates a strong relationship. However, if we see X and Y dash, X is 1, Y dash is 45, X is doubled, Y is reduced. X is increased again, now Y is increased. So there is no relationship. It indicates a weak relationship. So when points are scattered all over the chart, it indicates a weak relationship. So if we mathematically substantiate relationship between two variables, correct choice is scatter plot. So let me go back. So correct answer is option A, scatter plot. Let's read the explanation. All right, next question. All right, Monica, you have chosen option A.
Yes, so we talked about how an industrial project has like a high cost of incorporating changes. And that's because it takes a lot of time and it's expensive.
Okay. All right, thank you. Okay, Anton, you have chosen option B.
Yes, I've chosen option B just because it is really the scope of work that is clearly identified. And as far as I remember, it is the nature of project or its scope that actually drives to the selection of methods, being it agile or waterfall or hybrid. So in this case,
I believe because it's straightforward, it is B.
All right, thank you. Jayashri, you have chosen option B.
Yes, Amar. Since it's a large-scale industries project, the definable nature of nature is the project works. The nature is quite definable, and there's no point in going to the other options like due to high cost of incorporating changes. Yes, it could be there, but the reason for avoiding the agile approach would be due to the definable nature of the project work rather than A, C, and D.
All right, absolutely. So you'll see a lot of questions in the exam where you'll be having more than one correct options. But examiner, they don't ask you to choose the correct option. They ask you to choose the most suitable option, right? Or the best choice. So yes, all these factors are really important when you consider which approach you would be choosing. But the fundamental and primary factor that is important when you choose a methodology is scope definition. If scope is well defined, it is waterfall. If scope is uncertain, it is agile. So scope is the fundamental reason or factor or the basis on which you decide which methodology you would be choosing. So yes, high cost of incorporating changes, it impacts your decision. Slow pace of innovation is equally important due to the need of highly calibrated processes and tools. That's not relevant. And due to definable nature of the project work, these first three options are correct. But the most important or the primary reason behind choosing an option or choosing a methodology is the nature of scope. If scope is well defined, it is traditional predictive method. If scope is uncertain or it is evolving or it's volatile, then you would be choosing adaptive method or agile. Correct answer is option B. Let's read the explanation. So just an additional comment. We divide the work in two categories, industrial work versus knowledge work. So nature of industrial work is you can easily define it. On the other hand, knowledge work is difficult to define. It is uncertain. So due to that nature of definable work, we use predictive methodology. All right, next question. All right, again, very tricky question. Okay, let's talk about it. Gagan, you have chosen option D.
Yes, Amar, I was between like C and D. But D, I chose D because I can, within the meeting, I can reiterate on the ground rules that these are the norms and protocols when we have meetings, and reminding them both, and then I can go to the meeting agenda. So that's why I chose D. C, I did not choose because it is saying continue with the meeting, use facilitation techniques to improve communication. So I could not find any, like for improving only for improving communication. No, it is a conflict. It has to be handled maybe in a proper way later after the meeting. So that's why.
All right. Thank you for detailed explanation, Gagan. Robin, you have chosen option B.
I considered that the meeting was going nowhere with the conflict. So the best was to stop the meeting temporarily to collaboratively find an informal solution. So that's why I chose option B.
All right. So why don't you, find a solution in that meeting? I mean, why you want to stop the meeting? So if there is a conflict or discussion during a meeting, so would you be having another meeting for that, or why you don't respond to that problem there? Because it's an interactive environment, you can talk to each other. Why not that?
Because it was a serious conflict. So, the meeting was going nowhere. So was it going to continue on that basis? Or should we stop it and find a solution and then carry on with the meeting?
All right. Thank you, Robin, for explanation. Right. I'll take one more comment. Mohan, you have chosen option A.
Yeah, yeah, I was between A and B because of the fact that it's a serious conflict that broke out between the two. But I was trying to differentiate between A and B as to what the options were and what was differentiating between them. But ultimately, I just chose A because, the tempers and emotions are high, so taking a break, cool down, and coming back for a discussion, um, collaboratively trying to find a solution, negotiate whatever the issue is as a project manager.
All right. And Mohan, you have just answered your question as well, like what's the difference between A and B? So sometimes you see questions like that, where there could be multiple actions that you can take. So in that sense, a situation, you can use elimination technique. You can eliminate options one by one. So as Mohan mentioned, option A and B are almost similar. So take a break to cool down the anger and then come back for a fresh discussion, or temporarily stop the meeting and collaboratively find an informal solution. So almost similar options. Option C, continue with the meeting and use facilitation technique to improve communication. So again, coming back to the point which I was referring on Robin's comment, like you're already in a meeting, and during a meeting, if you have a conflict, so it's the project manager's job to intervene and help them find a solution, right? Because one of the skills of project managers is facilitation, facilitate the meeting, right? So correct answer is option C, continue with the meeting. There is no need to stop the meeting because it's a collaborative environment and it's the best opportunity to find a solution where people are sitting and they are having an argument and you can facilitate them. So correct answer is option C, continue with the meeting and use facilitation technique to improve communication. The problem with option D is you're reminding both of them of the team ground rules and you're continuing with the agenda. So it's a unilateral approach. It's not a collaborative approach. You're not involving yourself or you're not helping them solve the problem. You're just reminding them of team ground rules and continuing with the agenda. So conflict is still there. So option D does not help solve the problem that is mentioned in the statement. So if there is a serious conflict as a project manager, your job is to facilitate so that they have improved communication to find a solution. So correct answer is option C. All other options are incorrect because they don't address the problem that is mentioned in the statement. And also one more thing, it's a practice. Whenever you see a question, a statement like stop it, don't do anything, wait, right? Ignore these options. So we don't wait, we don't stop, uh, we don't put things on hold. So these are the options which are red flags that you need to see when you have those in your questions. So correct answer is option C. Continue with the meeting means stay in the same meeting and involve yourself, use facilitation technique and help them reach a consensus or find a way forward. That's a more collaborative way to handle the situation rather than just looking for unilateral ways or stopping the meeting. Let's read the explanation. All right. And normally, if you see in our real life settings, we don't postpone the meetings or we just stop the meetings. We find a solution in those meetings if there is a conflict, right? Okay. Next question. All right. Priya, you have chosen option B.
Yeah, I kind of used elimination approach. Communication management's plan, no. It tells you how to establish communication, but I don't think it tells you which document should be used. So I eliminated that. Stakeholder register was, it just tells you who you need to communicate to. Status report is basically giving you an overall idea about the work that's been done in the project and the status of the project and things like that. It doesn't specifically just focus on change requests. So I thought change log would be the best option.
All right. Thank you. Gagan, you have chosen option A.
Yes, Amar, I eliminated C and D because stakeholder register just have the names and their details. Status report, nothing to do with it. Changelog is a document which we update after getting the rejection or approval from the committee. And I need to communicate this change to stakeholders. So the communication management plan will tell me what is the medium, what is the way to communicate with them. So that's why.
All right, that is correct. I like the logic, but Gagan, question talks about status of change request. If you're not sure about the process, how to communicate, if you're not sure about which tool you need to use, which platform, which format, then communication management plan is helpful. But communication management plan does not have status of change requests. Status of change request is documented in change log. So if you want to communicate status of change requests, you will be using change log. In change log, you have all the change requests and their status. You understand that? So in order to...
That will give me the status.
Yeah.
And I thought that this question is asking how will you communicate that status to stakeholders. So I thought that whatever the email ID is or through phone or something, that will be listed in communication management. So that's
absolutely. You have used the right word, how to communicate, but in the statement, there is no such word that says how to communicate. If it says how to communicate, what's the process, what's the protocol, which model you would be using, which method, which how many channels or something like that, or which mod, platform, format, frequency, then communication management plan is the right answer. But the question says, which document should the PM use to communicate the status of change request? So if you want to communicate the status of change request, change log has the right information. You will be using change log, you will be extracting that information and communicating with the stakeholders. And then to communicate, if you're not sure about the process, you will be using communications management plan and stakeholders register, where you need to know specific communication needs of stakeholders. So correct.
Right, I get it. Yeah.
It's okay. So correct. So actually, I changed password and security protocols of my computer. That's why after that, you're not able to answer correctly. So correct answer is option B, change log. Let's read the explanation. So just if I go back, this looks a very simple question, right? But very, very confusing. This is what PMI makes PMP exam challenging and difficult, right? So if you want to see why this exam is difficult, because of this. So very simple statement. There are no language problems. It's straight question, but two options are really, really close to each other, and that makes it really difficult to pick up the right answer. Okay, and the only way is practice, nothing else. You practice and learn those principles and that mindset. That is the only way forward. That is only helpful to you to figure out what's the right answer. All right, last question. All right, Mohan, you have chosen option A.
This is very confusing. Um, uh, so, I mean, I think that, the issue here is that the client representative, like his question says, is believes that it's not providing enough information about the project progress. What should project manager do? To me, it was, I think, to review the document first and then maybe take action. So C and D are essentially taking actions. I'm sorry, C is taking an action. D is basically saying, hey, this could be a risk. So I think that was maybe the next step. So I eliminated C and D. B is essentially a communication management plan, like you talked about in the earlier question, it's on how to document. And A is where you want to review and see the engagement plan as to which stakeholders need to be engaged and what is the mode of communications. I think that is the reason why I picked A.
All right, Mohan. Anton, you have chosen option B.
Yes, I think it's the communications management plan that explains the frequency and content of communication. So that is why I thought it would be option B.
All right, absolutely. So the problem in the question is communication breakdown or not enough communication. So a client representative believes that PM is not providing enough information. Now, question is what to provide. What are the communication needs of stakeholders? These are documented in communications management plan, and how to fulfill those communication needs, right? So answer is communications management plan. So you'll go back and you see the communication management plan, what needs you have identified and what strategies you have planned for that. So if those are according to the stakeholders' needs, then maybe you would be talking to stakeholders and getting a fresh idea about their changing needs. So first you need to review and go back and see what you have documented in communications management plan to see if there is a mismatch between planned communication and actual communication. If there is a mismatch, then you will be adjusting your actual actions. If there is a gap in identification of communication needs, then you will be updating your communications management plan. Stakeholders engagement plan is for engagement. So if there is a change in engagement strategy, you will be updating stakeholders engagement plan. Or if the engagement plan is not relevant, you will be reviewing that. So there are different engagement strategies like co-location, co-creation, having face-to-face interaction, involving them in the project, right? So those are different ways of engaging stakeholders. So problem is not stakeholders engagement here. The problem is information, providing not enough information. And that is handled through communications management plan. Schedule more frequent meetings with the client representative. We don't schedule more meeting or less meeting. We schedule required number of meetings according to stakeholders' needs. So some stakeholders, they prefer face-to-face communication. Some stakeholders, they find an interactive dashboard useful. So according to the needs of the stakeholder, we provide information. So we don't go with meetings, we don't go with reports, we don't go with dashboard. We talk to the stakeholder, we understand their communication needs, and accordingly, we come up with a plan. And that plan is communications management plan. So correct answer is option B. Let's read the explanation. All right, everybody, thank you so much. We are done with our today's discussion. So I hope you have learned. So just put your score in the comment or in the chat window. You can send it directly to me. 50%, 40%, 50%, 50%, 60, 60, 60, 70. Wonderful. So anything more than 50% is really good. Less than 50% is, you need to work on those areas. Again, this is not an assessment. This is a learning process. Each question is a mindset and a principle. When we go through a question, we learn a concept that would be helpful in the exam. So do not evaluate yourself based on score. These questions are really challenging, probably at par in terms of difficulty level. So whatever your score is in these mock exams, you can expect similar score in the real exam. But it's a learning process. I hope you have learned, and gradually you are learning and improving. Thank you so much. I'll see you tomorrow with an interesting lesson. Take good care of yourself. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Amar.
Thank you.
Thank you.